Well, hello and welcome back to Wisdom Breaks. I'm your host, Dr. Addie, and my goodness, I have some great things in store for you. Stay tuned. The next set of questions is about parenting skills. And we got an array of questions in from so many different people to where we're going to have to split this episode. Have 2 episodes at least. So the first question comes from Columbia, South Carolina. And this question reads, Dr. Addie, how do you parent your child when you and your spouse have different belief systems about God? How do you train your children? This is a very important question, and this is why I often tell people these types of discussions should take place before we even get married. People often say, well, you're not supposed to be unequally yoked, but a lot of Christians are unequally yoked. And why do I say that? Because you can have a belief in God and not going in the same direction as the other person, and therefore, boom, you have this division and strife that comes into the relationship. Just like this particular question with the child, both of them are living in the same household. Both of them believe in God, but obviously they didn't have that conversation. So how do you train that child? Well, I would say first and foremost, pray and ask God to give you a strategy and give you wisdom how to encounter things with your spouse and how you guys can come and sit to the table and use the Bible as your basis and go from there. At the end of the day, you want your children to be raised in the admonition of the Lord. If you're a Christian and you say you're a Christian, you want them to be raised in a Christian home, this is what you want. So then if you both should want the same thing. So obviously how you get there may be different than how the other person want to get there, but you have to come to some type of agreement so that when you're with the children, you don't have this great divide and this conflict, because children will play on that. Children would play on that. You may say, how you know, Dr. Addie? You don't have any biological kids. Well, I know because I've raised kids. I've raised nephews. I've raised nieces. I said, so I've raised children where they live with me. So I understand that parenting thing. I understand it on a whole nother level. So again, communication is the key. Please do not argue in front of your child. Do not disrespect the other in front of your child. If your husband says to do this, you don't have to do that. I told him to do it like this. That's just wrong and it's unrighteous. What you want to do is come together, have a meeting of the minds and say, honey, listen, we didn't discuss this before we got married and I don't want this to affect our children. So can we just have a meeting of the minds and let's just try to come to some kind of conclusion concerning this. And I believe that when you pray, honey, everything's gonna work out all right. Thanks, Baxter. Now, this next question comes from Columbia, South Carolina, and it's very similar. However, this is co-parenting. The first question was concerning spouse, where you both parents are living under the same roof. Now, this is co-parenting, and this can be a little challenging sometimes. And the question reads is this: how do you handle co-parenting when one parent reaches out to the child with love and gifts and want to buy their affections, supposing to the next parent that wants to raise them up with godly values? So here again, you still got to come together and discuss this. I know at the end of the day, you can't change that other parent, especially if that other parent is a non-believer. But often I tell people all the time, you cannot buy your child's love. Because at the end of the day, that child is going to equate you with money. And when the day comes that you don't have money, then that child is going to look at you so different. I had someone that they were just buying their child everything. And, I told that person, and it was a man, and I said, you give your children whatever they ask you. I said, but really what they want is you. And so what you're doing is making them associate your money with you. And I'm going to tell you something. The day came when they didn't have money anymore. And those children, they didn't want to be bothered. They didn't want to be bothered. They felt like, oh, he didn't love me no more, because they didn't understand that he wasn't his money, because he did not make that clear. So I just want to encourage you, if you're teaching your child core Christian values, then you want to also instill to them that it's not the money, it's the love. So that even, maybe if that other spouse don't get that message, that memo, then at least you gave it to them, and they'll still be able to relate to it, and they won't just attach money to their parent. So I encourage you to just talk and continue to use that godly wisdom and teach those core values, because I'm telling you now, it's going to come up when you least expect it. They're hearing you. Keep it up. Now, this next question comes from Columbia, South Carolina, and this question reads, how do you help make a child forgive their absent father when you know that their anger is justified? However, you also know that unforgiveness will prohibit the child's spiritual and personal growth. That is a loaded question, but it's a very good question. And it was 3 points I wanted to make with this question. The first one is this: we can't make the child forgive. What we can do is teach them about the consequences of unforgiveness and let that be that choice for them to forgive. That's one thing. The second thing is this: even though their anger may be justified, it doesn't make it justifiably right for them to act in unrighteousness. And so this is what you have to teach them if you're teaching them those core Christian values, if this is what you want them to know. I often say kids learn by what they see us do, not by what we say. So the question is, are you walking in unforgiveness towards their father? Do they see the love coming from you, eluding from you? And obviously from this question, it sounds like something has transpired. So once that child see you walking in that love, and then if you're teaching them those core Christian values, then they're going to get it. They're going to get it because they're going to understand that unforgiveness is not about that other person. Unforgiveness will affect us, and that's what you don't want. Just like you said in the question, it will hinder their personal and their spiritual growth. There's so many people walking around in this earth full of unforgiveness and bitterness and just woundedness, and yet they trying to have relationships with others or other kids, be it other people, and it's not gonna work because it's gonna spill out of them. It's gonna contaminate everything that they touch. There's a scripture that says that the root of bitterness will spring forth when you least expect it. And I know because I've been in that place of unforgiveness and not knowing it, because I asked that person to forgive me, and I made a conscious decision to forgive, but I forgot that forgiveness was a process, and so I had to walk it through. And as I began to walk it through, there would be days when I felt like I didn't forgive, but I know I made a conscious decision. Hey, I chose to forgive this person. And when you do that, then everything begins to align up. So it's really a process. So I would have you to explain to your child that it's not just going to disappear overnight, the things that got it to that point, but that it's a process. We think that we say, okay, I forgive, and then everything's going to be hunky-dory. No, it's not. You're going to have to work through that thing. You're going to work through it. And it may take weeks, it may take months, it's going to take some time. But when you know you have made a conscious decision to forgive, that's what you keep before you. No, I choose to forgive. I choose to walk in forgiveness. And the task becomes very challenging when that person do something else. Because then you're like, see, this is why. But no, you got to go back into that place and say, no, for myself, I choose to walk in forgiveness. Because see, here's the thing, you want to create an atmosphere that's full of positive energy, that's bringing in everything that you have need of. love and all of this stuff, the good things. And so when we're walking in bitterness and unforgiveness, that's what we attract to us, bitter people and drama. And you don't want that in your life. I have a no drama rule. When people begin to show out like that, they have to go. Because my peace is my prized commodity, and I'm going to keep my peace at all costs. So again, take the time to embed in your child the whole purpose of unforgiveness, which is really not about the other person, it's about your child. And I think once they get it, they'll get it. This next question comes from Sumter, South Carolina. And this question reads, what if you're struggling with introducing your children to the ways of God? What can be done? Okay, so I often say this. God is a creative God, and that creativity is inside of us. And I believe that if we ask for creative ways to introduce our children to the things of God, He will make it possible. Now, there are so many places that you can go. There are Christian bookstores that have books that talks about things like this. I don't know if you're in a church or you may go to a children's church. All of these things are fabulous ways of introducing your children to God. Now, one of the most important ways of introducing your children to God is you and your spouse and your love for that child. You should be the epitome of God to that child. Your attitude, your disposition, whatever that child needs. When we were young, we were poor. We're from the south side of Chicago. We didn't have nothing, but you couldn't tell us that. We didn't know. We never heard words like this. Our parents never said words like this. I don't have no money. I can't get that now. I ain't got no money. They never said things like that to us. And so that made us feel like we could have whatever we want because money was never an option. So, when you're being that epitome role model of God to your children, can you imagine God saying to you, I ain't got no money right now? No. He wouldn't say that because our Father owns everything and He has everything that we have need of. So, there's creative ways to explain things to your children when your funds are low or when there's lack. There's creative ways to explain His love. And, I would say once you get into the presence of God and allow Him to make a download to you, then you'll be able to give that download to your children. Thank you for asking. I want to share this wisdom break moment with you. We're living in a time where people are like on edge and there's a lot of confusion and chaos in the atmosphere. And the one thing I want to share with you, my audience, is this. When it seems hard to trust the circumstances that you're facing with and that you're dealing with, I want you to take a deep breath and remember this, that God is able to do exceeding abundantly above everything that you could ask or think, according to the power that worketh in you. So it's here. There's the break. That's the wisdom break in it. The power that worketh in you. So let that power work in you and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me and watching this episode of Wisdom Breaks. I ask that you tune in so we can continue this conversation because I am curious to know about these parenting skills because you never know. Anyway, share the love.
Send your questions to Dr. Addie at a.mccafferty@aol.com. You may also follow her on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can purchase Dr. Addie's book, Beyond Betrayal, Standing in the Midst of Adversity, by going to Amazon.com. Or you can visit her website at www.addiemccafferty.com.